Hello everybody, my name is Darren Kerr from FK Partners, and I'd like to give you all some final tips as you get closer to the exam day for CFA Level 1. So just to give you some ideas to what we're going to talk about here, I want to help you understand a little bit more about what to expect on test day, as well as what to do over these final few days as you get closer and closer to your exam on June 15th. So on test day, I think it's important for you all to understand the rules of the exam. The CFA Institute outlines their exam policies on their website, and I encourage you all to go and read these sometime over the next week or so that you have a very clear understanding of what they expect of you as a test taker on exam day. I think you all know by now there's a calculator policy for the exams, and you need to use an approved calculator, which would be either the Texas Instruments BA2 Plus or the Hewlett-Packard HP12C. So make sure that you're using a calculator that is approved, of course, by the CFA Institute. They're very strict about their calculator policy. The other thing that I would encourage you all to consider is bringing an extra calculator. I think it's very important that you have a backup plan in case your calculator does not work on exam day. So either bring a second calculator or at least bring extra batteries that you can use to change out the calculator batteries if your calculator suddenly stops working. Make sure also that you check the batteries that you bring so that you know in fact that your extra batteries are in fact working in your calculator. So I think it's really important again that you have a backup plan in case the calculator stops working comes test day. Now, the other thing that's important, of course, is to make sure you understand the admissions and departure policy for the exam. So in terms of the admissions policy, when you registered to take the test, you needed to register with your passport, your international passport. You're going to need to bring the original document, the original passport, to be able to check into the actual test. In addition to that, though, you should also bring your admissions ticket. You, by now, should have an admissions ticket. So if you log into your CFA site, under your username, your login information, you can print your admissions ticket. I encourage you all to take a look at it. Make sure that the test location is accurate. If you plan to be taking the test here in São Paulo, make sure it says so. If you're going to be taking the test in Rio, make sure it says so. If you're taking the test in another location, make sure it's an accurate, it's accurate in terms of where you're assigned to take the test. The other thing to check would be your name. Make sure that your name matches the name on your passport. Well, the CFA Institute does allow for some variation of the order of your name. A middle name might be reversed in order. You want to, with time permitting, contact the CFA Institute so that they can correct any sort of mistake on your admissions ticket. You're not going to correct the passport, so you should correct the admissions ticket or have the admissions ticket corrected by the CFA Institute if there's a problem. But remember that you're going to need to bring both of those documents with you to be able to actually enter the testing room. Another thing that's important to understand in terms of the testing policy here, you need to arrive early. You're going to be assigned a seat on the exam, and it's important that you, when you show up to actually register and get that assigned seat, give plenty of time so that you can get through the line of people that are also registering and ultimately getting checked in for the exam. So for the São Paulo location in particular, there's going to be a lot of candidates across the 3 levels. We would expect over 1,500 candidates to be there on June 15th. So you're going to need to give that time so that you have plenty of time to make it through the line and ultimately get to your seat. We think that arriving 1 hour early is a wise decision so that you don't feel rushed or stressed with the possibility of maybe arriving late for the exam. The other thing that's important to note here as well, when you get there, the CFA Institute is going to make sure that they shut the door, before the actual time to begin the test is allocated. So the morning session is to start at 9 o'clock. You need to be in your seat well before then, as they're going to shut the door a little bit before 9 o'clock. A little bit more on that in a moment. Now, in terms of the answer sheet and the exam policy, the answer sheet and the exam is property of the CFA Institute. So they make you sign a waiver making it clear that this is their property and you have no right to it, and you're not allowed to take any of the exam content with you when you leave the room for lunch or at the end of the day. So just be aware of that. This is their property. You can't take the exam, so you can check later to see if you got questions correct or incorrect, that type of thing. Now, I mentioned the policy in terms of identification. So once again, remember that you need to bring the calculator, the passport that you used to register for the actual exam back when you signed up. It has to be valid. So if it's expired, you need to get a valid passport ready to go for the exam here in June. Now, some other things to keep in mind, in terms of testing policy. There are clear policies that they outline on their website, and I'm cutting and pasting in some of those here into this little final tips discussion. But you should go to the site here, and I've listed the address, the web address, to actually read this. And I would encourage you all to go a couple weeks before so you can read well in advance and make sure that you understand all of the policies that they have in place. So they've got the calculator policy, they've got the identification policy, the passport. You need to bring that admissions ticket. For level 1, you're going to need to fill in the answer key with pencils, so you should bring plenty of pencils. They need to be dark enough to be able to be read by the scanning equipment that the CFA Institute uses to actually grade your test. So the HB or number 2 pencil is a dark enough lead that will allow for the reading. So make sure that you have those, plenty of those, not just one. So make sure you have some backup pencils as well. On exam day, make sure that you bring the materials that you need to be able to work through the exam. So what are the materials that you have to bring to the test? Your passport, your admissions ticket, and make sure that you've printed the admissions ticket on a clean, unused piece of paper so that there's nothing written or typed on the back. The calculators that we discussed with the calculator policy of the CFA Institute. So you could bring the HP or the Texas Instruments, but make sure that you have a backup plan as well. So the approved calculators you must have. And then pencils, the approved pencils, meaning the number 2 or HB pencils that are dark enough to be read through the scanning equipment that they will use to grade your test. Now, what are some items that you can bring to the exam? You don't have to bring, but if you did bring, you can keep them on your desk. A pencil sharpener, a manual pencil sharpener, not a knife, but an actual manual pencil sharpener to be able to sharpen those pencils. Erasers, but with no paper holder or cover, so just a loose eraser that you could use to erase if you made a mistake and wanted to refill a different answer. The calculator batteries, so we mentioned about having a backup plan for the calculator. Either bring a second calculator, or at least at the minimum, bring the extra batteries so that if the calculator stopped working, you could continue with the exam. So the calculator batteries probably will require you to have some sort of tool, like a screwdriver, to be able to open the back of the calculator to replace the batteries. You can, of course, bring that as well. Calculator cases are permitted. Eyeglasses, if you wear eyeglasses. Earplugs. It's going to be quiet in the room, but sometimes students get a bit distracted with the ruffling of papers, the sound of that pencil filling in the answers, or the sound of somebody erasing furiously, that type of thing. You can bring earplugs if you feel like it will be helpful to you. And then wristwatches. One of the things that's important for you all in terms of your exam strategy would be making sure that you have a proper time management strategy, something that we're going to talk about in a few minutes. So I think it's important that you have a wristwatch that you can use to be able to mark the time as you move your way through the 3-hour sessions. Make sure, though, that the alarm is off. Also, make sure that it's a simple watch, not a smartwatch. No smartwatches are allowed. So, simple wristwatch, no timer or timer turned off, no alarm turned off, these types of things to make sure that you don't make any noise that could distract other candidates on test day. Now, some items that you are allowed to bring into the actual testing room but must remain either in your pockets or under your chair. A wallet or your money, you can bring that in. Medicine or tissues or other sort of personal items such as those can be brought into the room. Gum, hard candy, cough drops. The eyeglasses case, so you can bring your eyeglasses, and if you have a case for the glasses, you can bring that in and put it under your chair. And then keys to your car or your apartment, you're also allowed to bring into the room. Now, items that you are not allowed to bring in, but you cannot bring into the testing room. Any food or drink, including water, you cannot bring into the room. Any backpack or any baggage of any sort, so backpacks, handbags, tote bags, briefcases, anything like that, including passport covers and pencil cases. All of that needs to stay out of the actual testing room. There's going to be a personal belongings area in the secure area that you can leave those types of belongings in, but you're not actually allowed to bring them into the testing room. So of course, no study materials are allowed in there. Scratch paper, calculator manuals, all of that must stay outside of the actual testing room. To continue here, any highlighters or correction fluids, not allowed into the testing room. It's not that type of test. Multiple choice test, you're filling in an answer key with pencil, so you don't need to bring any of these highlighters into the actual room. No weapons, that's on the site, no weapons allowed. Mobile phones, more important probably. No phones are allowed into the actual testing room. You're going to need to leave those outside in the personal belongings area. Or just don't bring it at all that day. If you feel uncomfortable leaving your iPhone or your smartphone outside in an area that another 1,000 plus people are leaving their belongings in. But just be aware that they do not allow any sort of mobile phone inside of the actual testing room. They also don't allow you to bring a clock, a desk clock, and put it on your desk or your table there. You can bring the watch, I encourage that, but no clock, no timers are allowed in the room as well. Now, as you get closer to the exam, what should you be doing in these final couple of weeks as you get close? Well, make sure that you're studying all of the relevant material that's part of the CFA Institute curriculum for that year. So remember the LOSs, those learning outcome statements are what are used to ultimately formulate the test questions. You should be focused on those as you review and understand the questions will be coming from them. Don't try to outguess the actual exam or the CFA Institute. They can test you on anything that's in the curriculum that's formulated through a learning outcome statement. Make sure you're doing plenty of practice questions at this moment in your preparation. You can be using either the Kaplan Schweser material or the CFA Institute material, or what I would recommend, a bit of both. The CFA Institute has a nice study bank or Q bank that they have available for you all as level 1 candidates. If you log in as a candidate for level 1, you'll have the opportunity there to do a lot of practice directly with the test maker. And then Kaplan Schweser's got a lot of great questions to practice as well. We want you to be doing at least 5 of the full-length practice exams, maybe more, but at least 5 up through until the test. That'll help you gauge your progress, and it'll help you with your endurance as you work your way through up until test day. You want to have a well-defined plan. More on that in a moment, but you need to have an understanding of how you're going to navigate yourself through the 3-hour sessions and ultimately the full 6-hour day of testing. You can take, hopefully, a little bit of time off from work. A lot of students are able to take a few days off, maybe a week off before the exam, maybe even more than that. That's great if you're able to. I know not everybody can, but if you're able to, that should help a lot over that final push getting you ready to go. Make sure that you're doing full-length practice tests. I know sometimes students will do a 3-hour session in one day and then another 3 hours in a different day, but make sure that, and you can do that to some degree, but make sure that you're doing still some full-length 6-hour test in the same day to try to simulate what it actually will be like on the exam. Again, it's different than doing a 3-hour session one day and then another day doing the next 3 hours. The endurance that you need, the focus that you need to be able to work through the full 6 hours is quite different than only doing a 3-hour session. So make sure you practice full 6-hour tests as you get closer to your June 15th test date. Now, it's also important to understand where you're going. So make sure if you're doing it in São Paulo, you know where the test center is in location to where you're going to be staying the night before. Whether that's your apartment or some other place. And if you're Rio, same idea. Understand how long it's going to take you to be able to arrive at the test center on a Saturday morning. You can simulate this. You can get into Google Maps, or you can open your app for Uber or one of the other apps and determine how long it should take around that time of day and that day of the week to be able to arrive, and then give yourself a little extra time. You never know with these big cities, São Paulo and Rio, how the traffic is going to be. You don't want that extra stress of fearing that you might arrive late for the exam. So get there early, have your plan ready in terms of when you're going to leave the house or the apartment so that you can get there in time. Now, in terms of the actual day before, there's not a lot you can do to actually study on the day before. We think the day before is really a day of rest. light review though, and rest. Make sure that you're well rested for Saturday when you actually take the test. Very, very important that you are, because the exam is a long day. You're going to have to get there early. It's a very stressful day. You want to try to minimize as much of that stress as you can by getting there early, making sure you have a backup plan for the calculator, extra pencils and all that, but it's still going to be a stressful day. So make sure that, as you get yourself prepped by Friday before, a lot of rest, go to bed early, maybe watch a movie or something to get your mind off of the actual exam the night before. Now, what to expect actually on test day. So I've already mentioned a couple times to get there early. Got to bring all of those required documents like the admissions ticket and the passport. You got the calculators, the pencils ready to go. Now, when you're actually sitting down and starting the test, make sure that you're reading the questions carefully. Watch out for what we call the distractors, or the extra information that's not needed. Watch out for questions that you might think are too easy. Maybe you misread something, and when you go back and reread it, you realize the question's asking something a little bit different. And then starting with something easy. This is a topic that I want to explore a little bit more with you all. You need to have a timing strategy for your exam. You need to have a plan how you're going to navigate through the 3-hour sessions. So if you remember on the sessions, you have all the different topics being tested in the morning and then all again being tested in the afternoon. And they're organized by topic. They're going to start with the ethics material, then the quant material, then the economics material, then the financial reporting material, and on down through the rest of the topic areas. So you can focus on any topic that you want. You could go in order, or you could skip around. For me personally, I didn't like to start with ethics. I instead would start with another topic that I found easier, and I'll give you a couple examples. I think for level 1, a lot of candidates believe corporate finance and equity are a couple of the easier topics. If you were to start with one of those, that might be a good way to build up some confidence and also allow you to accumulate some time that you can use for other sections of the exam later. So I think it's important that you all try a couple of these strategies in terms of how you're going to move through the different topic areas within a section before you actually go to the real exam. So you can do it with your mock exams. Don't leave anything blank. It is a multiple choice test. You've got a chance. There's only 3 possible answer choices, so fill in everything. Make sure you're neat and organized. Make sure you're filling in the bubbles. Don't have stray marks on the answer key. That can mess with the grading equipment. You're not going to be able to bring food or drink into the exam, but you can have a drink before. You can go to the bathroom if you need to during the exam. We would encourage you to try to do that before, though, as opposed to using time during. If possible, try to get that out of the way right before the start. At lunch, make sure you have something healthy and that can give you energy to make it through the afternoon. We'll have a happy hour at the end of this for our students, so no cervezas at lunchtime. We're going to do that at the end. Expect the unexpected. A few years ago, during one of these exams, the power went out and all the students had to put their pencils down and close their exam books, and it took about 1 hour before the power came back on. One of these unexpected things that can happen. And while it was frustrating, everybody's exam counted the same. Everybody, ended up receiving their results just like all the other candidates around the world. They might have been through or gone through a more difficult ordeal, but the CFA treated them just like any other candidate. They got the same amount of time, even though they had that 1 hour break to wait for the power to come back on during. So that time, of course, didn't count towards the 3-hour session, but just to give an understanding of what we're talking about, these things can happen. Stay calm. It's a long day. You can miss some questions and still pass. And it's important that you stay focused and calm as you work your way through the exam here. So what are we looking at? You all know this by now, but for level 1, 240 total questions, 120 in the morning, another 120 in the afternoon. So it ultimately breaks down to 1.5 minutes per question. But we need you to be pacing through the sessions more quickly than that. So try to have a strategy where you can finish the exam in about 2 hours and 20 minutes, maybe 2 hours and 30 minutes. But that's going to give you maybe 1 minute and 15 seconds per question, a minute to 1.5 minutes, depending on the length of question. They're not all the same in terms of timing that you'd need. But on average, maybe a little over a minute per question. So you can accumulate some time and have it to use to try to answer the harder questions at the end, go back through and check your work at the end, and all these things that will help you maximize your points comes exam day. As I already mentioned, these exams are organized by category, so you can jump around and look at corporate finance, or you can look at fixed income, whatever you think is a topic that you want to start with. Kind of go in the order you want to go in. You don't have to go in the order that they set out for you. Read all the choices. It's a multiple choice exam, so the answer is in front of you. It is A or B or C. Watch out for the long questions. Figure out what actually matters to be able to answer the question, meaning what's relevant. They try to give you extra information in these questions so that they can distract you. They want to make sure that you know the content. And one way to test that is to give you lots of information and have you zone in on what actually is needed to answer and not needed to answer. So be aware that that is something that they do. If you practice enough questions leading up to the exam, you're probably already seeing this. The calculator, of course, is necessary for some questions, but is it necessary every time? Maybe not. Think about if you actually need the calculator to answer the question. You might be able to save time by not using it on some of the easier calculations, or by employing an elimination strategy to be able to knock out one or even two of the incorrect answer choices. Your first impression is usually correct, so go with it unless you have a good reason to change it to some other answer choice later. Stay confident. On the level 1 exam with 240 total questions, you can actually miss 72 questions and still receive a score of 70%. If you get 70% of the level 1 questions correct, you're moving on to level 2. You might be able to get a little bit under 70% or more than 72 incorrect, but know that if you can make it to that 70% mark, you're going to be moving on to the second level. That means, though, that if you actually get 70%, you did miss 72 questions. That's a lot of questions, and if you miss a stretch of questions during the exam, maybe a certain topic area, category of questions that you're less comfortable with, it can hurt your confidence. So stay confident. Know that you can miss some questions and still pass, and keep pushing through. You've been studying for months, and it's important to pull it all together on exam day, but realize also that you're not going to be perfect. There's going to be holes in your knowledge and topics that maybe you're still not 100% comfortable with. On those tougher questions, then it might make sense sometimes to move forward, meaning don't spend a lot of time on them at the beginning, the first go through. If you can make it through the exam in 2 hours and 20 minutes, then you have some time at the end to go back to and revisit those tougher questions. At the end, you don't want to leave anything blank, but you can the first time through the exam. Don't leave lots of questions blank, but you can leave some blank the first time through. And again, even if you don't know the answer, there could be a way to eliminate one of the choices that you clearly know is not the answer, giving yourself a 50-50 chance with the other two possibilities. As I said, time management is really key to this. A lot of questions to answer, 240, so 120 each session. So you got to keep moving. So it's important to have that watch, monitor your progress, understand which sections you want to do first and second and third as you move your way through the topic areas. You got to practice this. That's what the mock exams are for. I mean, obviously they're there to test your knowledge and to see where you are relative to what you need in terms of the passing score. But they're also there to try time management strategies, to try different techniques where you might skip around and do different sections, not in the same order in which they're presented. These are the ways to practice how you're ultimately going to formulate and implement your strategy for taking the test. So make sure that you're using the mock exams for this purpose, in addition to simply testing your knowledge. Never panic. Sometimes we can get frustrated. We can go through a stretch of topics that we're not very good at, and that can make us a bit uncomfortable. But if you panic, then things will get worse. You'll get more stressed. It can hurt your ability to think clearly. So if that ever really starts to happen to you, put your pencil down, take a deep breath, take about a 30-second break, positive thoughts, and go on from there. During the lunch break, I think it's important also for you all to regroup and stay positive. You don't want to be around the people that are complaining. Unfortunately for this exam, the pass rate is, under 50%. I think it's around 40, 41, 42% in the last few years. So remember that the people around you, if you look to the left, you look to the right, these are assigned seats. So you're not sitting next to your friend or your neighbor or one of your colleagues from the CFA course. You're sitting next to random people. Maybe they are people but they're assigning you seats. So just realize because the passing score or the passing percentage is less than 50%, more people are going to fail it than not. And for that reason, you're going to have a lot of people complaining at lunchtime about how hard it was or how bad they're doing. You don't want to have lunch with these people. You want to look at, staying positive, whether that's going off on your own or having lunch with a close colleague that, is well prepared and is probably doing okay. But for me, when I did this, I used to go off on my own. I didn't want to be with anybody during lunch. That was for the happy hour, but not during lunch. So have a plan for that. Also be aware that there's a lot of test takers that are going to be there in the Sao Paulo location, all with you at the same time. So at 12 o'clock, when it comes time for lunch, a lot of them will go to the restaurants and the shopping connected to where you're taking the exam. And that can overwhelm really the facilities in the shopping. And sometimes the waits for lunch are quite long. So you might want to have an alternative place to go for lunch nearby, but not actually in the same building. Just an idea. But again, point is regroup, refresh, eat something to make sure you have the energy to continue into the afternoon. Stay positive throughout. Maybe get some fresh air by walking outside, but stay away from those that are complaining or are frustrated about maybe how poorly they're doing. So these are my tips for you all in the final days as you lead up to the exam. Hopefully it gives you a little bit of a sense of what to do in terms of the final prep over these final few days, as well as what to expect on actual test day. If you have any questions or comments that you'd like to bring up with us here at FK Partners, please feel free. We're here to try to help you. We'd love to see you be able to pass this exam and move on to level 2. We're rooting for you. And again, good luck to you all.